I want to welcome everybody to yet another episode of the Shadows podcast. I'm excited. I had this one circled on the calendar for quite some time, especially since we originally connected probably a couple months back. But I'm here today with Penelope Jean Hayes. Ma'am, thank you for being a guest here on the Shadows podcast.
Thanks for having me, Trip.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. She is and ma'am, if I say anything in here that you want to add to it or if anything is incorrect, just let me know. Founder of Viral Energy Institute, motivational new consciousness writer. She's also an amazing author. We're going to talk about both of her books. And then a contemporary philosopher. Anything on there? I know TV personality, so many more other things to throw in.
Oh, just background stuff, but I'm Penelope, and you can call me Penelope Trip.
Will do. I struggle with
You're
the
so
ma'am
respectful with the ma'am,
Yeah.
but Penelope will do.
I think you actually corrected me on the email with that. You're like, just call me Penelope.
Yeah,
And I probably replied with yes, ma'am.
Well, that's okay.
Well, to go ahead and get started here, I'm going to throw some rapid fire questions at you.
Yeah, let's do it.
You have two plane tickets. One ticket you can return to somewhere that you've been before. Another, your number one bucket list place to visit. Where do you go?
Ooh, you want this rapid fire, don't you? Okay. Oh, that's
I can
tough.
edit the pause.
I've been to some nice places. I would say, just off the top of my head, I'd probably go back to Positano, Italy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Why there?
Well, it's chill. It's a very chill, relaxed place. The food is fantastic, Italian food, but it's this wonderful village right on the Mediterranean. And the people are just fantastic. They're so friendly and outgoing. My husband and I actually honeymooned in Positano, and we've been back since. And it's just one of those very special places for us. It has like just a good feeling to it. It sort of feels like a second home. So if you ask me maybe 6 months from now, I might have a different answer, but maybe right now, the idea of going to a place that's just relaxing and comfortable, beautiful is the way to go. Yeah.
Italy's a good one. Verona is my place in Italy.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Nice.
Outside of just the typical Rome or Venice answer.
Uh-huh.
Where's the one
like
place?
Rome. I mean, Rome.
I do too.
Yeah, I mean, Rome has the best coffee in the world, in my opinion. Something about the water.
It was 430 degrees when I went to Rome.
Oh, nice.
It was so hot. And we went to the Colosseum and we're on the top level doing the tour. And I felt like I could just touch the sun at that point. It was scorching that day.
Yeah, that's tough to be in a big city with a lot of concrete in the middle of summer. That's a tough one. September is good for Rome.
Yeah. Rome, it's so much to see there, though. It's just
there is so much to see. And it is, the typical tourist town for sure, city. But if you dig a little deeper, so what we like to do is just explore, just like hoof it around the city.
Yeah.
Don't jump in a cab or on a bus, but just walk.
Yeah.
And same with Manhattan, actually. Just to walk Manhattan, you can walk the entire island of Manhattan and do everything by foot. So I think that's the way to go. Just end up at a cafe somewhere, have a bottle of wine. Don't worry about an agenda. That's how you do Rome, and be happy doing Rome, right?
Yeah. We found this. We were looking for a place to eat. And you know how when you go to those bigger cities, someone will grab you on the side at the restaurant and try to pull you in to come eat. And this one older gentleman had grabbed my wife and my oldest daughter and was kind of like, follow me. And they're like, oh, of course, we'll go down this dark alley with you. And this long alley we walk. And I'm like, my radar's up. I'm like, where's this guy taking us? There's no signs of life back here. It was this little pizzeria.
I can see where this is going, though.
Yeah. Best place I've ever eaten.
Best dinner you ever had.
It was phenomenal, but it was so far out of the way. Like, I think he had to probably walk us back out, but it was great. My daughter, the other day, we were talking about best food we've had, and she's like, that little sketchy place in Rome.
For sure.
It was phenomenal. What about the one place you haven't been to?
Okay. So, I would like to go to Fiji and Africa, South Africa. I have a friend there. I'd like to get there. And there's a lot of places that would still be on the list for sure. Peru, but that's a major adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. If you could do one job for a day, just to see if you like it, what would it be?
One job for a day, acting.
Acting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm surprised you haven't done that already.
I'm an on-camera talent, so I was
Yeah.
with ABC for 5 years. So on camera is it's different than acting. So memorizing lines and actually acting. And in some ways, it's almost like the next step to
Yeah.
on-camera work and news type stuff. And I think that just being on camera as much as I am, it's something that has occurred to me. Oh, I wonder if that would be fun.
Hmm.
I wonder if that would be fun. So to do it for a day, maybe. I have done, different, gigs on television, but not where you're actually memorizing lines, more like a host.
Yeah.
And hosting is a um, more natural than actually acting. So I think that might be fun.
Okay. One thing that you are afraid to try.
Afraid to try. Trip, you have some questions here.
These are just the rapid fires.
Well, so I'm co hosting a television show that's in development right now called
Mhm.
Conspiracy Detectives. And one of our pilot episodes is an excursion to the Grand Canyon.
Ooh.
And there's a place that we're trying to get to in this excursion that, to tell you the truth, it scares the pants off me because it's a dangerous trek.
Okay.
And I'm sort of thinking, am I cut out for this? When I was younger, I was Miss Rock Climber. I did a lot of rock climbing. I also mountain biked, and I was a lot more adventurous. And with age, I find that I have gotten a lot less adventurous. Life has become much more comfortable. And so, just doing some of the things that I did in my 20s is now like, oh man, I don't know if I still have it in me, to
Yeah.
do that. And I don't think it's a fear like in terms of physical, like getting hurt. It's more of, can I do it?
Yeah.
Can I? And that's probably why I want to try, because of that renewed challenge. Can I still do this
Yeah.
at this age?
The mental piece.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Something interesting most people don't know about you.
Something interesting most people do. I used to take naps with lions and tigers.
That's interesting.
It's
My
interesting.
follow-up is going to be, please tell me more about that.
Right. So there was a local zoo in the town that I grew up in, the small petting zoo that I would go and volunteer and help raise lions and tigers and cougars and just spend time with them on the weekends. And after, working with them for 5 hours, I'd curl up with a 200-pound lion and take a little nap. And it was a wonderful time. But what's really more interesting about this story? So I started to wonder, why these animals were in this petting zoo, and where did they come from and where did they go after they got too large to be interacting with the public. So I did some investigation, and I actually followed it back to where they originated from and where they would return after they did get to be about 2 years old. And they were being used trip and canned hunts. And so a lot of these small petting zoos, they wanted to bring in young people like I was at the time to what they call socialize the animals. Now, I was young. I didn't realize, why are we socializing these animals, and
Yeah.
found out that it was so that they would be docile. They would be very friendly, and they were being used in canned hunts. So, yes.
Wow.
So, yeah, I did report it, by the way.
Yeah.
And
That's
I
what I
don't
was going
think
to
I
say.
don't think anything was done about it, but I think it's important for people to know those things, what you're supporting, which I didn't
Yeah.
know at the time.
And it's good because a lot more of that stuff is being brought to the, out in, out there in front of people now, like SeaWorld,
Yes.
everything that was going on at SeaWorld and
Oh,
all
yes.
these other places. So yeah, we'll talk more about that momentarily, but to go ahead and get started, for casual listener to the show, they have never heard your name before. Tell us just a little snapshot about who you are.
So I started off in public relations a number of years ago and worked for a large company and did very well in that career. And then I felt, I had at this point in my life, I was suffering from a functional depression. And so this is going back to, I guess it was my 20s. And functional depression is when you still go to work every day, nobody knows what's going on. Um, you're not necessarily suicidal, but you're unfulfilled and living in a state of unfulfillment over a chronic period of time. So I had, these 2-year relationships or 3-year relationships, and then they would end. And I don't know how it is for guys, but for women, you invest 2 years or 3 years in a relationship, you think you're going to get married to this person. So when that falls apart, it's a massive loss. It's a huge hit. In addition to that, I wasn't satisfied with my job. I had this great job in public relations, but I just knew that there was more inside me, more that I was destined to do, that my soul wanted to do, this purpose that I knew I had inside me. But I felt very pigeonholed in my career, and what the world would allow me to do. So in my case, I had this idea that, okay, I'm in public relations. This is what I'm supposed to do. How do I just jump to the other things that I wanted to do? Because the people in my town knew that this is what I did, and I'm not this. So for me, I actually felt I needed to take a quantum leap. I needed to change everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for everybody, but it did work for me. So I moved from my town and I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and I opened a small public relations business. So kind of in the same field, but instead of working for PR for the CEO of my corporation and for, the marketing for that business, I was now working with individuals, and I started working with celebrities, and I would do their public relations. I think I might hold the record of being the publicist for the most stars for the Bachelor franchise. Is a little bit of trivia for you there.
Yeah.
And so I've worked with a number of those individuals, stars of the show, and Survivor. That was a really fun series to work on as well. And so I was, I don't know if it was luck or a combination of luck and hard work and experience. I was good at what I did.
Yeah.
But I do believe that in taking new water into my pond, this is the metaphor that, my life, the energy of everything that was my life was stagnant. And so anything that doesn't circulate will stagnate. So you think about a pond of water, if it doesn't circulate, it will stagnate. You think about blood in the body, money, resources that don't circulate will stagnate. And so I knew this. I had been studying on my own spiritual journey, studying metaphysics, and I knew this in concept, but taking that leap was the hardest thing that I ever did, because I really had to abandon everything that was comfortable and to go out and start everything new. So I did start this new business in this new town. And in doing that trip, it ignited a series of events that, because I brought this new water into my pond, that it was just like I was meeting people, the resources were coming, the connections were coming, people were helping me, introducing me to other, like it was just on fire. It went from this feeling of unfulfillment on a daily basis to everything was new, everything was exciting. Yeah, I was scared, whatless in some ways, but I felt alive for the first time in years. And I started meditating at that time. And so I would go out into a forest close to Nashville. There's actually Percy Warner Park. It's a forest right inside the heart of Nashville, really. But you get out there and it's hilly, and you can look at this precipice over just miles of beautiful forest. And so I would go out there as often as I could, sometimes every day. And on the weekends, I would spend hours out there in this forest meditating. And I really didn't know what meditation was, but I just knew that nature was healing. And I do know now that meditation is whatever you make it. And so it doesn't have to be something specific or technical, and you don't have to learn how to do it. It's just, being. And you don't have to try to think or not think. Some people think that you have to meditate means put all thoughts out of your mind. And I would say that's not true and probably not even possible.
Yeah.
And so just sitting in nature was this meditation that changed something internally with me. And with that, it changed everything in my life and the trajectory of my life. And so I would go out and spend sometimes 4 hours, 5 hours sitting in nature. And one day I had an absolutely extraordinary experience
It's
while
the
sitting in
owl.
nature. The owl
The
story.
owl. Okay.
Yes. So that is, for anyone who's interested, I have 12 books now. This is actually my favorite, The Magic of Viral Energy. And this story comes up pretty early on in the book because it
Yeah.
sort of sets the tone for, how I came to what I do today, which is the study of viral energy. So here I am out there sitting in nature, sitting on this cliff, overlooking this beautiful forest and surrounded by forest. And I knew I was going to be there a long time. I had, a little bit of almonds, I had some water, and I just was chilling there for hours, doing nothing in particular. And I did have a pen and paper, which I always brought with me because I would have these great ideas while I was in the forest. I'd write stuff down. It opens this portal to something that you're like, whoa, where did this idea come from? Because it seems like you'll get them in the shower too, by the way.
Oh, that's the
So
best spot. Yeah.
I know that resonates with a lot of people. So
Yeah.
try to keep a pen and paper near the shower because you're going to get ideas in the shower if you don't already. So I'm just kind of writing down ideas, but just sitting still. And then all of a sudden, this little chipmunk sort of walks past my foot and walks like kind of over my toe, right? Just kind of climbs. And I'm like, what is going on? What's with this chipmunk? Like, why is he so close to me? I thought that was strange. And then there were deer that came along and they're just super close and they just walk right past like I wasn't there. And so I'm thinking, like, am I invisible right now?
It's like an
Am I
episode of Twin
literally
Peaks or something.
invisible? That these animals that, I was there often, you see and hear animals at a distance. It's usually just the breaking of a twig, but to actually have them act as though I wasn't there. And then I see in my corner of my vision this large body move and just kite through the air. And all of a sudden, this giant owl lands on a branch right in front of me. We're talking feet away. And giant owl is actually the name of the species, but this was a big owl, like a very large. And he's just sitting there right in front of me. And so, because I'm sitting on this edge of the cliff, I'm looking eye to eye with this owl because he's on this tree. And so his branch is straight ahead of me. And we're just sharing space together for a period of time. Now, I wasn't keeping track of time. It could have been 10 minutes we were sharing time together. It could have been longer. And I almost telepathically started realizing that a shift had happened. And I'm thinking, like, why are these animals okay with my presence? And I start looking around at the forest and everything was illuminescent. As I'm looking at it, it was almost that the colors were more vibrant. They were sparkling. And I'm saying, like, and by the way, I'm a person who's never done drugs. This is not like some, trip or, I've never had anything like this happen before. And the forest was like sparkling as if I was seeing another dimension, like the curtain had been lifted and that there is something there for all of us, not just in the forest, but where we're sitting right now. There is this other dimension that when your energy, your internal energy vibration synchronizes with that perfectly balanced energy. And so nature's doing that great. It's already doing it perfectly. It doesn't have the free will to make the choices that we make that lower our vibration. Nature is already vibrating perfectly. And so that's the rub, that's the catch. You can do it anywhere, but it's a wonderful modality to just get out in nature because it makes it a lot easier because you're marinating is what it is. So marinating like a piece of steak, marinating in a sauce, you take on that flavor. So I am, here I am meditating in the forest, marinating in the forest more specifically. And I began to balance my internal vibration, that hopped up energy that was me coming from the city, coming from my life, dramas. I was there for long enough that my energy synchronized with the energy of nature. So it's homeostasis. And then I realized this concept of viral energy, and that through a passive experience of osmosis, we pick up the energy around us all the time, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Think about how important this is. So now I'm having this wonderful, transcendent experience being accepted by the animals because they knew that I'm in balance with them, which means I'm not going to hurt them. That's what this means. So as we raise our consciousness and we raise our vibration, that's what happens, that we can heal the world this way, because from those higher levels of consciousness and energy, vibration, our presence, we're at a level where we're not going to hurt each other. We're incapable of causing harm to the environment around us and people around us. So this then becomes the goal, to raise our consciousness in this way. So I started writing down this philosophy of viral energy, which became this book. And now it's an institute that I founded, the Viral Energy Institute. And I speak around the world, and I'm on a lot of talk shows. I've been on Dr. Phil, ABC News, and it's become quite a healing modality for people.
When did you realize that you got something here with this viral energy thing?
It just resonates. Yeah. It resonated with me on a deeper level, that I was this person that had been a seeker for many years. So I was the perfect test patient of whether or not this was a useful new modality. I had studied a lot of metaphysics. I had read all the books of law of attraction. I had all the vision boards. I had the one on my ceiling trip. I had the one on my mirrors in the bathroom. I had, I felt like I was doing all the right things for many years. And still I had this life that was unfulfilled, that was, searching for something on a deeper level. And I find that functional depression is actually a positive sign that you're a seeker, a positive sign that you're awake enough to know that you're unfulfilled, a sign of someone who probably has a deep soul history. And on some level, probably unconsciously, that there's more for you. So to not necessarily think of functional depression, and again, we're not talking about the stuff that, we want to make the difference between when you need medical attention and there's a difference, but a functional depression is when you have been marinating in a certain energy for long enough, a chronic enough period of time. That could be unfulfillment at your job, relationship, just sadness, loneliness. This goes on long enough. You take that in like a sponge, marinating in that energy environment that you're in. And so, we can't just think that we can go unscathed. Like we can just go through life and subject ourselves to
pass over,
all the crap in the news. And you've got that friend that's just drama, always dumping their stuff on you, right? Whatever those things are in your life, you can't just think that you can just keep doing this to yourself, keep accepting it in without a filter. Like, how about deflector shields up? You have to protect your presence, or you can be knocked down in that vibration and therefore experience these levels of sadness and loneliness to a point that you just can't even dig yourself out.
Yeah. And I know we're focusing on your book right now before we really start getting to other pieces of your journey. But one of the things, especially you brought up putting up your shield, that there's 500 things that I wrote down that I could pull from this. But I told you the one thing that really stuck out to me was people that stick their straw in your milkshake, the energy suckers. So because I don't want to give away too much of your book, but
you can give away as much as you want. So folks still need to actually get this book, because it's kind of like the Bible of fixing yourself. There's just so much information in the magic of viral energy that is helpful. And it's actually told through, this, but it's told through these stories. So it's actually fun and sometimes even funny. And so it's it's an easy read for anybody, but yeah, go for it. Spill the book.
The one thing I was going to say before I go to the energy suckers, for anyone listening who is contemplating buying this, the way that you describe things, even when you were talking about like the crunching of the gravel and as the car, just like the way you describe it is, and your storytelling ability is phenomenal. You did, and that it really gets you glued and hooked to it right off the bat reading it. And it's, I'd read some of the reviews before I even got started, and they're like, you can't stop reading this. And everybody, you get that on a lot of reviews, but I started reading yours and my wife was talking to me and I'm like, hang on one second here. Really and I started like repeating stuff back, and this book found me at a really good time. It really did. And I told you that before you hit record. I think that there's a lot of stuff that I've been going through, that people, hopefully our listeners are going through, that this can really, I mean, just the name of the key to happiness, empowerment, and purpose. Purpose is something most people are striving to find. What is their purpose? They have passions, but what's your purpose? And so I think you did a phenomenal job with this. But yeah, tell our listeners about the energy suckers, because I thought it was very interesting.
We all have them in our life. So if you imagine that you have a milkshake and someone else sticks their straw in your milkshake and they start drinking your milkshake, this is what people do to us on a regular basis. Oftentimes, they're even family members. They're people close to us. They're people that maybe think they have a free pass to suck your energy. And we know what that, it's exactly how it sounds. So you're having a perfectly good day. All of a sudden, you get a phone call from someone who, through their own like dumping, it's almost like they vomit their issues on you. And in doing that, they're basically, so through the work that I do, I discovered through the research that people have a need to, when they're in pain, to get rid of the pain. So what they want to do is they want to like expel it out of their own beingness because it's too hard, it's too difficult. So this is where you get animal abuse, spouse abuse, verbal abuse, just someone who's angry. You don't know why they have these anger issues and why they could snap at you. This is why, because when you see that, when you experience that in someone else, this is a person in pain. And so most people are not like awake enough yet to know what to do with that and how to better handle that. What's the best way for them and for everyone around them to actually handle that. So what we tend to do as human beings is we feel like we need to get it out. And so we do this. It's like that verbal abuse or even physical, because you just have to, you have to get it out. And so what that does is then those people around you are getting the brunt of that.
Yes.
And it's this downward devolution type cycle. So it's not good stuff. So what you need to do is to know that it's going on, and mindfulness is actually just a huge part of this. So just knowing that this happens and why it's happening, you can actually say, you know what, I don't accept that. And so in the book, I use this story of, let's say you're taking a walk in the park. You're having this beautiful, this story, right?
Yep.
You're having this beautiful, perfectly nice day. You're sitting there on a bench in the park, just enjoying yourself. The sun's on your face. And all of a sudden you see somebody coming by and they've got their dog there, and the dog does a doo-doo, and that person picks up their dog's poop and puts it in a bag, walks over to you as you're sitting there enjoying your day on the bench, and just goes to hand you this bag of doo-doo. What would you do? You would say, I don't accept that.
Yeah. What are you doing?
Yeah. You're not going to just take it.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to say, I don't accept that. Well, this happens. The bag of doo-doo happens all the time. And we have the right to say, I don't accept that. I have a chapter in the book that lists a bunch of different, like actual phrases that you can begin to use for people in your life. Maybe they're, putting down your beliefs. Maybe they're like, oh, you can't do that. Or they just don't believe in your, whatever it is, whatever it is that you believe in, your passions. They don't support you. They're giving you grief about what you're doing, like whatever that looks like, whatever the situation is for you. And there's a number of things that you can say that just makes it easier. They're perfectly respectful. Don't meet their energy where it is. Like, don't try to, be aggressive towards people, but you can very simply just say, I love you and I don't accept that. I love you, yet I don't accept that. And that's it. You don't even have to explain. Just say, I don't accept that.
Mm-hmm.
And it works really well.
Yeah. And, another thing before we get to Do On to Earth, when we talked originally, you had told me some really good stuff about your upbringing and some of the challenges and the struggles that you had to go through. So to kind of rewind a little bit and go back to your childhood, tell our listeners a little bit about where you came from, where you grew up. I believe it was up north. Am I correct?
In Canada.
Yeah. So tell our listeners about your upbringing, and then a little bit, some of those struggles that you had to endure and overcome.
So when it wasn't that many years ago, before I started writing The Magic of Viral Energy, I had a decision to make, because I had this in my heart that I wanted to write a book. Now, it's not It's not a biography, but I certainly use a lot of my stories as examples. And I also use other people's stories as examples to explain what viral energy is and how it works in your life. Well, I had this decision to make that it was like, I'm going to have to share myself and my backstory in order to write this book. And it had been where I hadn't, written the book that I wanted to write for a little bit of time, because at that time I wasn't willing to go there. I was afraid that people would look at me differently, or it would hinder my opportunities. I was now a public figure. I was already on television at this point. So this is not that, right? And so when you ask me, what are you afraid of the most? I mean, this is the kind of stuff I used to be afraid of, but I wouldn't have told you that then. And so now it's almost like trite things. What are you afraid of? I don't know off the top of my head, but what I used to be afraid of was people finding out that I was a runaway at 15 years old. Yeah. So I came from a great family, a really great family, as a matter of fact. And I'll start by saying my mom and dad are two of my best friends to this day. I called my mom just before I got on with you, but I had a tumultuous time as a teenager because, we moved every 2 years. That was part of it. And both of my parents are entrepreneurs, so they were very busy with their businesses. And I kind of felt like I was, fell through the cracks, where when you're that age, it's difficult to move frequently. And I'm sure some of your listeners will understand that. And so for me, my perception, which was probably not the way, my family saw it, was that, I was very alone in the world. I felt very detached and alone in the world, that kind of like I'm on my own to make friends again in a whole new city all over again. And I was giving up. So I had an experience of heavy viral energy for a chronic period of time, and just felt that, it was a difficult time for me anyhow. Simultaneously, my parents put my cat to sleep. And so this cat was my best friend since I was 4 years old. Now I was 14 going on 15. And I didn't think it was time for my cat to get put to sleep. They did. It happened. I was absolutely powerless at that age to stop it. So whatever the reasons are for teenagers, it's hard to be a teenager. Mm-hmm. So I left home at 15 years old. I packed up all my stuff, threw all my clothes in a black garbage bag over the shoulder, like a hobo, and out the house I was. And I did not know what I was getting myself into, but for the next number of years, I was in and out of the house, mostly out, and I would sleep on the couches of friends. And then it'd be friends of friends and people that I didn't even know. Maybe I met one night and now I'm sleeping on their couch. I'll say, thank God nothing terrible happened, because it didn't. And I don't know how I got so lucky, but nothing terrible happened.
Sally's house, right? You were at Sally's for a while.
Yeah, that wasn't her real name. But
Samantha. Samantha was.
That is, and that's the name that's used in the book. But so she was a stripper and she was, I believe she might have been like 37 and I was 15. And I didn't know her. I was brought there by someone else. So, I met someone who knew someone who knew someone. And then all of a sudden, now I'm sleeping on the floor, the basement floor of this woman's house, who I didn't know. And she hated me. I don't know what it was. Here's this kid that's sleeping in her
garbage bag.
Right, with the garbage bag with stuff. And this was like a bare basement, not a finished basement. Like there was nothing there. There was a dirty old blanket there, and not even a pillow. It was dank. It was scary, but I was more stubborn than I was scared, in terms of going back with my tail between my legs to my parents' house. So I was like, full of piss and vinegar, as they say at that age. And so I had a difficult number of years. And then eventually at 21, got my first actual apartment. Now, all of that being said, I finished school while being, homeless, which is not to say on the street, but it's to say I didn't have a home. And I was like on couch to couch basement and had no stability at all. I graduated with a 96% in advanced courses. And while this whole thing was happening, I always knew that I had plans and a destiny, which is maybe strange, but I did. For me, I did not marry myself to this, existence that I was experiencing. I felt it was temporary. So I was lucky that I had something internal, this fire in my belly that said, like, this isn't going to go on forever.
Yeah.
And it didn't. So, I had a great job right out of school in public relations, and began, being able to pay for an apartment, and pulled myself out of my situation. But as a result, I had experienced depression for years. So to be in that situation, again, you don't, get out with like nothing on you. Like, you pick up stuff like a ball, snowball rolling down a hill. You just pick up stuff energetically. And so then in my 20s, a number of relationships that broke up. I was not happy in my work. I knew there was more. And so I was bona fide depressed by this point. So I had a New Year's Eve where I had just had a breakup with someone who I thought I was going to marry. In fact, we had gotten engaged briefly and then broke up. And so this to me was sort of the last straw. I just couldn't go on anymore. I was tired. I was tired at a very young age. I was absolutely soul shattered, tired of starting over again is what it was, and tired of my circumstances. And so I was suicidal on this New Year's Eve. And so I'm running through all of the ways I could end it. And I thought of, hanging myself, and that wasn't going to work because the ceilings weren't really tall enough and there was no hooks. I'm in this apartment. It logistically wasn't going to work. And so then I ran through different options of, could I slit my wrists? I don't really think I was brave enough to do that. I knew there'd be pain involved. It was just like, how do you do this? So, and then I thought about, asphyxiating myself in my car. So, it was an awful trip, but this is what people suffer when they're depressed is this, on one hand, I really don't believe anybody wants to die, even people who are suicidal. And I can say this from experience because it wasn't just the one night I was suicidal. I didn't want to die. I wanted to wormhole out of my circumstances.
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to snap my fingers or ask God, somebody like change it all right now, like fix this, like help me, somebody help me, like divine intervention, whatever that was. And because that really didn't happen, you end up where, this is it. And so I was at this precipice of, do I end it all or continue on the way I was? And it's a very hard decision. So I'd ask people who are suffering with depression or family members who are dealing with someone who's depressed or suicidal to have great compassion. I really don't like when people say that it's the easy way out because there's nothing easy about this. They're suffering so badly. I can assure you there's nothing easy about this. And I also, through my research, have not met a person who hasn't suffered depression. Everyone does. Everyone's capable of suffering depression. It's when circumstances go on for a chronic period of time and you feel there's no hope and you can't see it changing or anytime soon enough. I was at that age too where everything had to be now. Yeah. And I think that is for a lot of people in their 20s and 30s. Like, I kind of knew that if I waited till I was 50 or something, it was going to be better, but I wasn't going to wait.
That's our society right now in general.
Yeah. And at that age and at 30s, I think 30s are the new, 30s are the worst, the most difficult. People are kind of settling down later and later. Like 30s are a really tough decade for a lot of people. And what it is you feel like, yeah, I mean, if I could wait this out, it'll probably get better, but can I do this anymore? Can I start over again? Am I willing to do this? Because it's exhausting. And so I did have an epiphany moment where I, was crying my guts out and just kind of spoke to the ceiling or to heaven or to God or to whoever was listening. And I just said, if I can get through this, I will dedicate my life to helping other people to show them what I did, like what worked for me. And at that time, nothing had yet worked for me, but I did get through that night. And it was, I think 5 weeks later, I quit my job. I moved countries from Canada to Nashville, Tennessee, and literally changed everything. And that's where I was. So for the next person, they wouldn't have to be so, quantum leapish. But for me, the choice was like die or change my life.
Yeah.
And I knew that I needed to change a lot of things. And so for the next person, it wouldn't necessarily be all of that, maybe just their job or something. But I do encourage people to see what you can do to bring new water in your pond, because it's just a metaphor for new energy into your world. And that new energy will multiply, and that new energy, like a domino effect, will start to help you pull out of it, like one rung of the ladder at a time. And that's how you have to do it. So any of those modalities, the stuff that I teach with viral energy, it's about modalities to begin to pull yourself up, to enlighten your energy, just incrementally, until you start feeling better. And as you're feeling better, now you're vibrating at these higher levels. There's actually seven levels, seven strata, I call them, of vibrational energy. And so when you're down here, like, you're only getting what you're in flow with. So we hear that, oh, you're in the flow, or you got to be in the flow. Well, you need to know what flow you're in. So there's these actual 7 layers. So when I was in that, awful
Hell,
place,
right?
yeah, I was,
stage.
yeah. So hell's the bottom layer. And it is like the word's symbolic.
Yeah.
So hell on earth for some people. And that's how I felt. And above hell is ignorance. And then there's indifference is the layer above that. Above that is the layer of wanting. I think most people are there.
Yep.
Above that is the layer of awareness. And this is starting to get all, it's a big jump from wanting to awareness. Above that is the layer of creation. That's where I feel I'm vibing with now, is in creation. And that's where you're just, making it happen. You're creating every day. I see you doing that too. You've got the podcast, you're teaching, you're creating. Creating is exponential. So the more you create, the more creation happens. And it's one of the best things you can do for yourself, is just start creating. And the top layer is heaven, like a heaven on earth type, complete enlightenment. Very difficult. But these are the 7 layers. So what you're in flow with, Trip, you're only going to get what's in there. So think of it like a river, because, the term inflow. So think of this as a river, and there's 7 rivers stacked on top of each other, but you're not going to get whatever river you're flowing in. You're only going to get what and who are also flowing in this river. So if you're in this, river of wanting, and in your river are these things, well, guess why you always have the same sort of things and people pop up in your life? Because that's all that's in flow at this level.
Yeah.
But you're really wanting what's up here. So there are ways to raise your consciousness vibration that will get you up there. And that's why you need to read the book, The Magic of Viral Energy.
It's on page 32, by the way.
There you go. Look at you.
Yeah, the 7. I thought that part was really, I actually studied that part. I was doing research on it, and it is 32, right?
You're good.
Yeah, I love the chart. The chart really drew me in, and then you explain it right after that. So it's yeah. And I appreciate you opening up and sharing about that too for our listeners, because I told you before we get started, we have a lot overseas, we have a lot military, and it's really hard when you have overseas military, and now you throw in this wrench called COVID. And
right.
We were talking about how we have felt fortunate in a way that we did not struggle like some people have with, being confined to an area, and sometimes just isolation, like you're just there by themselves. What advice would you have to someone who may have those tendencies or those warning signs that you went through, and feels like, oh my gosh, they're basically right there at that suicidal stage? What advice would you have for someone?
First of all, to get out into nature is something that we can all do. Like, even if your town is locked down and you can't be around other people. I mean, this is a question that's really loaded right now, because how I would have answered this a year ago is different right now. And my heart really goes out to single people. The reason why you and I have fared pretty well is because we're both married, I think. For number one, we have people that we live with, and we have a partner in life. And I think it is especially difficult for people who are single and have to live in an apartment by themselves. And with COVID, now you're not like allowed to socialize with other people. So this is the unfortunate perfect storm of what could be a functional depression for a lot of people. So one thing you can do is get out into nature. Nature is vibrating perfectly. Nature will lift you up. And so you have to do it for more than just like a half an hour or an hour. Do it like I did, like get out there for a couple of hours. Just say to yourself, look, it's Saturday or whatever day is your day off. Like I'm here for the day, and just see what happens. So you're going to have to commit to yourself a little bit here. I would also say to attempt to cut off energy suckers, because your life is so important, and the energy that is you is affecting your happiness. It's affecting your earning potential. It's affecting how people respond to you. It is the fuel for what you're creating your life with. So, this energetic presence that is you is the fuel for your relationships, your job. It is what you draw from to create your life. And so, if you're being knocked down with, energy suckers or things in your environment, maybe you watch too much news, you're picking this up osmotically, you're marinating in too much negative and heavy energy. So I would say that it's up to you, and that you're so worth it. So don't just think, oh, this is the way it is. There are things that you can do to mitigate your environments. And that might be what's coming through your television or your radio. Listen to more podcasts like Tripp's podcast. You have to choose to do things that will bring in lighter energy. And they might sound to you right now like a small thing. They're not small things, because together they are very large things. And if incrementally you can raise your energy vibration little bit by little bit, what you're doing is all of a sudden you're in this other flow, and a miracle will happen for you, because there's a tipping point that happens, and all of a sudden, whoa, everything's just like flowing. You're in the flow, that flow that you heard about. Now everything, is happening good. You're meeting these great people, and everything's feeling better. It's not feeling so overwhelming anymore. That is because of all of these small and incremental things that you did. And one day it got to this tipping point, and it was getting lighter and lighter to a point that the scale tipped. And now you are residing in this higher vibrational flow, and it feels so good, and you'll know it when it happens. And I promise you, you can do it, and you can do it through making these conscious choices. Get out into nature. It's already doing it perfectly. Bring a pen and paper, start writing down ideas. When you're in the shower, be mindful of the ideas that are coming to you. There are modalities that are there that want to help you raise your vibration.
Yeah, that's good. Very good advice. I definitely appreciate that. And especially those, like I said, overseas people, there are plenty of good spots to get out and enjoy nature. Speaking of, the next thing I want to ask you about is Do Unto Earth. Mm-hmm. So if you don't mind, if someone has never heard of that book, please explain that one to them.
Yeah, Do Unto Earth, over here behind me, for those who are watching, Do Unto Earth. It's a large book, and it's also a fun read. So when I finished The Magic of Viral Energy, and it just came out a year ago, yesterday actually was its publication date, and I was already beginning the outline for my next book, which was to be titled Do Unto Earth. And it was taking the viral energy message from personal and interpersonal modalities and stories to the global level, and how viral energy, the contagious nature of energy through social interactions in the environments all around us, isn't something that only affects us personally and interpersonally. It also affects the planet. So I had this idea, and again, these are the things that come to me while I'm doing my nature meditations and writings. I had this philosophy that heavy energy or light energy could also pool in masses, could kind of connect to each other and be sticky to each other, to where you would get masses of light or heavy energy around the planet. So you think about industries that pollute. Is there an energetic effect? Is there an impact to factory farming? Is there an energetic impact to a mass quantity of fear and suffering, whatever that might be? Is there an energetic impact of wars? You look at areas, in particular the Middle East, areas that have been ridden with wars for so many years and generations. Is there an energetic impact? And of course, the answer is yes. So then what does that mean? So if we know that energy is contagious in our social interactions in those environments all around us, and we know because we've already proven this on the personal and interpersonal level. So we know that a smile is infectious. If you're ever watching TV and somebody on TV is smiling, you might find yourself smiling. If you look at a baby and the baby's smiling, there's no doubt you're smiling because it's contagious. We also know laughter is infectious. We know a bad mood is contagious. Somebody walks into the office, they're in a bad mood. It just seems to like flow through the room. We know these things because we know them for ourselves. So we can prove that. It works the same way in larger pockets. So whether it's this war, this energetic scar on the planet through something going on the planet, these things are also contagious. So if you're living in one of these pockets where there's a mass of tumor of heavy energy, or on the flip side, light energy, you think about different energy centers in the world where you just feel there's that place. Hawaii is one of those for me. It just feels great. You know, the energy of Hawaii, it's a place that's still birthing all the, volcanoes. Mother Earth is still, renewing, and creation is happening there. There is an energy there. I land in Hawaii. I'm like, I can feel that energy. So what it feels like. Yeah. And so what it feels like, whether it's heavier or it's light. That's how this book started. That's what I set out to write about. And then things shifted a little bit and expanded, because it does still include that do unto earth, but it's so much more. So I was contacted by a woman who's an intuitive psychic. She's a channeler of spirit, and she lives in British Columbia, Canada. I had known her through a few interactions. And one day she contacts me and says that the spirit who she channels, wanted to assist me with what I was doing at the Viral Energy Institute, is how it started. And I was like, wow, that's cool. One of the things that we seek to do is to look at metaphysical modalities, that the mix of traditional science with metaphysical sciences is the way of the future, to look at that we have more than five senses, that we have abilities beyond what we're tapping into, and what could happen if we could tap into those. And so there are a lot of resources there. So I was into it because I'm open to those things. So this is great. Okay, so let's start. So I started by asking questions that were pertaining to environmental repair, which is what I was working on at the Institute, one of the branches that I was working on. So that was the focus. So I would send questions to this channeler. Her name is Carol Serene Borgens. And she would then, within an hour or two, return the answers from spirit that she channeled through automatic writing. As that went on for a couple of weeks, I realized, like, this is a book. This was more than, it's actually a conversation of me asking questions, answers being returned from spirit. And it was so fun and conversational that I was like, I need to call my literary agent, because this is a book. And it did feel to me like it should adopt the title Do Unto Earth, because I do cover the viral energy masses, but we go into so much more. I mean, I ask everything. I ask about what happened at Roswell. I ask about how are the Great Pyramids built. So there's these mysteries and curiosities, human curiosities, that I dive into, while we also talk about environmental repair. What will that take? What's the replacement for plastic? I mean, plastic's just crude oil. So if we could replace our need for crude oil, first of all, what would that be? Because we're still using it. And even if you're driving an electric car, that electric car got its energy probably from a coal mine somewhere. So we need to become more aware, and as consumers make choices and demand change. So we talk about a lot of this in the book, and we have, conversations about the new fuel for interstellar travel at light speed. Like, it's just a fascinating book. So when I called my agent, sent him a few pages, he was like, or I emailed him, I didn't call him. So he's Bill Gladstone, the famous Bill Gladstone. He's literary agent to the stars. He has all the best clients: Eckhart Tolle, Neil Donald Walsh, like a lot of people in the very high up in the spiritual space of self-help type books. And when I sent him the first, whatever it was, 200 pages or something, he called me. Very busy guy, usually doesn't call. He calls and he's like, Penelope, Do Unto Earth, love it. And that was it. I mean, we were off to publication in no time, because it's good. I mean, it reads like a movie. It's super fun.
Now, if one of our listeners want to get their hands on either one of those phenomenal books, where would you point them to?
They're in all the places. So all of my books are sold everywhere books are sold, anywhere you like to buy your books. The easiest thing for me to tell you is to go to my website, where all the links are to all the different places to buy. And my website is PenelopeJeanHayes.com. And if you can't remember that, you can also go to just onepenelope.com. That's the number one Penelope.com, and it will divert you to the other site.
We'll have both of those links in our episode description. So if you're listening to this, just check that out and I'll take you directly there as well. Before we start wrapping this up, if you don't mind, tell us what do you currently have going on in terms of podcasting, television? You mentioned conspiracy detectives.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have a lot going on. One of the main things right now is work through the Viral Energy Institute. So we are located in beautiful Naples, Florida, on a 2-acre property. And here I hold retreats for people. So when the world opens back up, we'll be starting our in-person retreats again.
Oh, wow.
And we're also bringing that retreat. There's online courses, but what I'm in the middle of doing right now is bringing the retreat experience to a 3-day online class, so that I have different guest speakers as well as myself teaching the viral energy message. We do guided meditations. All of the types of things that would normally happen in person at the retreat will be online. So we're trying to bring people into that. So that will be happening soon. I think within a month we'll have that live. So a lot of my time and focus is on the Institute. I also coach people one-on-one. We could do Zoom coaching, telephone, all these kind of great things. And yes, I have the television show, which is in development. It's in pre-production right now. It is called Conspiracy Detectives. I co-host with a gentleman named Rex Bear. And we travel around America looking into ancient mysteries as well as pollution juggernauts. So it's all the type of things, like the word conspiracy just means something that a larger body isn't telling the public. That larger body could be the government, but it could also be corporations, industry. And so when something's being hidden from the public, it's a conspiracy and we want to know about it. So the types of conspiracies we're interested in are a little bit different than what you might think. There is some kind of alien stuff too, but what's really in my heart is exposing pollution, cases of companies dumping with impunity into our rivers and streams, things like that. We want to get in there. We're going to sneak in there if we have to, and we're going to expose some of these things, make it known to the public.
Have y'all come to an agreement with the channel that's going to be on?
That's exactly what we're working on right now. We have something called a showrunner. So I have my television agent and a showrunner, and they're in the process right now of pitching this show to networks. So we have high hopes for that. We've got a great team on board. And in the meantime, we've been doing video interviews on our YouTube channels. So on our 2 YouTube channels, we have 500,000 subscribers. And so we have quite an audience, actually more than you would get on television, to be honest with you. So they're able to go there and watch some of our stuff. And it's just us doing these Zooms, talking to special guests. We're digging into our investigations from a distance at the moment. So interviewing people, talking about some of the investigations, just trying to get momentum going and build our audience.
Where can they, or what are the name of those 2 channels?
So my co-host, his is Leak Project on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And then we have Conspiracy Detectives on YouTube. But there's a website, conspiracydetectives.com. That's an easy one to remember. But also, if you do go to my website, so onepenelope.com or penelopejeanhayes.com, everything that I'm into is linked. We have a website dedicated to the Institute. You just click on Institute at penelopejeanhayes.com, and you'll get there. Click on show, you'll get to Conspiracy Detectives. So it's a one place shopping for all of the different links.
Yeah, it's a very well put together website. I will say that. So final questions for you here. First, in hindsight, looking back at your journey, you've had an incredible journey so far. Biggest thing you learned about yourself?
To be honest about sharing my journey with other people is the biggest thing, because I was in fear for so long to tell people that I had been a runaway at 15. I also, by the way, spent 3 weeks in the psychiatric ward of a hospital when I was suffering from depression. I had an abusive relationship and actually suffered from physical abuse in a relationship and had PTSD from someone who I'd broken up with, broke into my house in the middle of the night, assaulted me, physically beat me up. And he was arrested, went to prison, by the way, for attempted murder. And I went to the hospital for PTSD and was there in the psych ward for 3 weeks. So fast forwarding a decade or whatever that was, I'm now on camera talent for ABC News, doing all these great things in my career. And I just didn't think anyone wanted to know those things about me or accept those things about me. Yeah. And I was living in fear of, like, I didn't want anybody to know. Even my husband, we weren't married yet, but we were dating and maybe about to get engaged, and he didn't know. And I finally had to fess up. So I would answer your question by saying that it was the most freeing, liberating, and wonderful thing when I finally started sharing my story with other people, because you know why, Trip? A lot of people have experienced what I experienced, which I thought was so anomalous. Yeah. So many people could relate to one part of that. If it was depression or issues as a teenager or loneliness, or, you know, I also had a period where I was financially broke. You know, I had it all. And a lot of people relate to these things. So instead of seeing me as, oh, this person who, has this great life, I mean, that's just a bunch of BS in most cases. So I would encourage anybody to open up. And when you share your story, you make a lot of great friends because you're being very authentic, and people resonate. I'll speak in, for me, people have resonated with me on a deeper level than before. So I learned that it's okay to own my past and who I am.
It's a really good answer too, because I can account for that. I told my story on the pod. I withheld my story for 20 some years, and it was like, nobody wants to hear it. Nobody's going to care about that. And then the people that reached out to me afterwards, people that I'd worked with and haven't talked to in 10 years, were reaching back. So the power of storytelling. Absolutely.
Yes.
And final question for you. I love to ask this one. When somebody stumbles upon one of your books, 100 years from now, or they hear your name 50 years from now, what do you want people to say about you?
You're good. You're good. You're a good interviewer. She loved deeply.
Simple, but powerful. Simple. I like that. Okay. So, ma'am, I cannot thank you enough. I'm going to have to work out something to get you back, even if we're not recording, just to talk to you about these books, because, it really resonated with me a lot. But I want to thank you for taking time to do this, and for being willing to be here on the Shadows podcast and share your story with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you. I honor what you do. And you've, very similar to my story, you've stuck your neck out to be there for other people, and you're sharing yourself with the world. So thank you. And thank you for having me.
Absolutely. What final comments do you have for our listeners?
I would say just to accept yourself and protect your personal energy. And it's okay to say no sometimes. It's okay to look at what's going on in your world and actually mitigate. This is a yes and this is a no, and you're worth it. Well,
ma'am, this was amazing. Thank you very much for your time, folks. Thanks, that is going to conclude this episode of the Shadows Podcast.